This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope everyone's having a good day out there today. Got a lot to get to today. I know they say that a lot, but I got a big rundown. I always list out everything I'm going to talk about on the show, make a lot of show notes, stuff like that. I was worried about today because didn't feel like there was a lot going on. Then I started making notes, and I was like, well, actually, there is a lot going on. It's the end of March. There should be, I guess, but just kind of crept up on me that here we are with so many things to get to today. Randy Johnson will join me here in a little while, covers Gopher hockey for the Star Tribune. Gophers play UMass 5 p.m. tonight in the NCAA first round. We'll see how that goes for Bob Motzko's team, the number 2 seed in that regional. UMass, the number 3 seed, but UMass also should have the benefit of some home crowd out there in the East, and also is the defending NCAA champs. So right out of the jump, a tough one for the Gophers. I'll get into that more with Randy here in a little while. And talk about the other Minnesota teams in the tournament. Fared quite well on Thursday. Got to talk about NCAA men's basketball tournament, which was quite good on Thursday. Got to talk about Za'Darius Smith's contract, how maybe it's not quite as big as it initially seemed, and the Vikings pursuing another former Packers player, this one a cornerback, in free agency. But first, what did I miss? Let's start with the Wild, which will flow naturally into another near and dear favorite subject of mine. Wild beats Vancouver 3-2 in overtime on Thursday. Good win for the Wild. They had some breaks that didn't necessarily go their way as they kind of moved through that game. Had a goal disallowed. That was, a good call. But anytime that happens, you worry about you worry about momentum, things like that. But they kept their composure. Game got to overtime. Then an absolutely beautiful goal by Joel Eriksson-Ek in overtime on a breakaway to finish that one off for the Wild. Now, all of a sudden, this Wild team has won 4 games in a row. We talked about the slide they were on. That slide is no longer. Cam Talbot been playing quite well before and after the trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. He's actually won, counting them up right now, he has won his last 7 starts, playing quite well. And the Wild, in general, have been playing a little bit more of a defensive game lately, and much to the chagrin of Patrick Royce, who we'll talk with on Monday again, who loves the Dean Evison kind of free-flowing style. They've had to kind of rein things in a little bit. They got kind of loose on that losing skid they were on, and they've really kind of brought things back into a tighter game. And Evison even addressed that after that win Thursday night against Vancouver. Here's a little clip of him talking about that post game.
Our game has tightened up. I mean, it's had to, right? Situations dictate that. Teams have dictated that. Vancouver played great, back to back. They had a lot of energy. We didn't at the start. They flowed into that game, and we did not. We liked. I think Freddie had 8 scoring chances against, which is good for, we got to play that type of hockey for sure down the rest of the way.
And listen, like the fire wagon hockey is fun, right? Getting up and down the ice, scoring, winning 5-3, 6-4. Those are fun games, but those are probably not how you're going to win most of the time in the postseason. So I get it. You're struggling. Your game's gotten too loose. You got to do something. That's the natural counterbalance. You tighten things up. You get a little bit more defensive, and it's worked. They've won 4 games in a row. They've allowed just 5 total goals in those 4 games. All of them started by Cam Talbot. Defense has been better. They've gotten the right additions lately. And they've only scored 12 goals in those 4 games. That's enough when you only give up 5 total. That's a good goal differential, but that's just 3 goals a game. I mean, so it does show they are winning largely with keeping the puck out of the net, not putting the puck in the net. So it'll be interesting to see how they marry kind of their identity as time goes on, because I do think they still thrive in kind of that transition, quick skating, being hard to play against, and putting 4 or 5 goals in at a time. But It's working right now. It shows you can win multiple ways, which is never a bad thing. And you can win with multiple goalies, I hope, for their sake, because sounds like Marc-Andre Fleury will start Saturday's game, first of a back-to-back for the Wild, that one against Columbus. And then they'll put Cam Talbot back in net Sunday for a big showdown against division-leading Colorado. Win moved the Wild, by the way, back into second place in the Central Division. And you should always, anytime you're looking at the standings, by the way, keep in mind that they have games in hand against everyone in the West. They have played the fewest games in the Western Conference, tied for the fewest number of games in the entire NHL, just 62. Colorado's played 2 more. The Blues have played 1 more. Nashville's played 3 more. So the teams that they're in their orbit, or that they're trying to compete against, they have played fewer games, and so they have more opportunities to stack up points than these other teams do. Flip side of that means they're going to have a lot of back-to-backs, a lot of a compressed schedule, as we've talked about, including coming up this weekend, like I said, with back-to-backs against Columbus and Colorado. That naturally flows into one thing I wanted to talk about before we get to Randy Johnson and even more hockey talk. Now that the dust has settled a little bit on a lot of these moves that teams are making, and I know the Vikings are still in the midst of it, we'll get to that in a little bit here. Maybe the Twins have another addition to make. We can certainly hope so from their pitching staff. Now that some of the dust has settled and we're kind of reevaluating some of these teams and we've seen what they're up to, how their seasons have progressed, what pro team in Minnesota do we feel like has the best chance to win a championship next? Maybe let's say the timeline is the next 5 years. Who would you bank on the most to possibly win a championship in Minnesota? That's a tough question in my mind. I mean, I feel like the default answer, when we consider all 6 of the major pro sports teams, the default answer is always the Lynx, and I think what they've added this offseason puts them into that conversation again. But I think it's interesting to think about the Wild in that context, because I think the Wild right now might have just as good a chance as the Lynx to win a championship in the next 5 years. I like the way they're constructed. It might have to be sooner rather than later, because they're going to get themselves into some salary cap, difficulties here coming up with Suter and Parisi's contracts and those buyouts hitting them pretty hard in the next 2 or 3 years after this. But this year, they're in contention. I know they had that slide, but they're in contention. They've got the goalies to do it. They seem like they've got the 4 lines to do it. They've worked on shoring up their defense a little bit, although that's still a question mark to me. But you look at some of the advanced numbers. You look at some of the sites that try to rank these things. They're like 5th or 6th best chance to win the cup this year, and 2nd or 3rd out of the West. Beyond Colorado and Calgary, I think the Wild's probably the best team in the West still. And again, that's going to mean they're going to have to go through one or both of those teams to make it, but it also means they are right there with those teams. So I put the Wild right there, kind of a 1A with the Lynx. Beyond that, it gets tricky. I think Minnesota United is looking strong at the start of this season. Seems like they have the right mix. They've got the superstar with Reynoso still. They seem like they have the right mix of a little bit of youth and some veterans. I don't know if I'd put them number 3, though. That said, I don't know who else I would pick number 3. I think the Vikings are a ways off. I think they're going to be stuck in this kind of middle ground again this year. In the NFL, that gives you a chance. If you get in the playoffs in the NFL, you can get hot at the right time. You can go on a run and get to the Super Bowl. I know that's true, and I know when you have a new coaching staff, when you have a new regime in place, there's always the possibility that translates into more wins than you expect. But I don't put the Vikings in that category right now. I don't put the Twins in that category right now, even with the Carlos Correa signing. Although, again, with baseball having more teams making the postseason, there is a greater likelihood that if you just get in and get hot at the right time, you can do it. But the Twins, as currently constructed, with their pitching the way it is right now, are not set to contend in 2022. They're possibly set to contend for the fringes of the playoff race, but I do not see them as a serious championship threat right now. 2 years from now, maybe, if some of that pitching pans out, but we got to wait and see on that. The Timberwolves are interesting too. Not this year. This isn't their year yet. This is their year to break through and get into the postseason. I don't know what their ceiling is yet, though. I'm still wondering, do they have one or two more levels to this, or are they going to kind of plateau at a certain point with this roster? So all of it bears watching. All of it is fun to watch. I think a lot of these teams are interesting. I think every single one of these teams can be a winner, can make the playoffs this season, and that's interesting to me as well. I don't think we've had a season like that in a very long time. But if you're asking me who has the best chance to win a championship in the next 3 to 5 years, my answers are the Wild and the Lynx.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
All right, excited to have Randy Johnson on Daily Delivery today. Not the Randy Johnson. I saw there was an anniversary. I think it's been 21 years since the pitcher hit the bird with the pitch.
Oh, boy.
Not to be confused with the former pitcher and the bird incident, but the college hockey writer at the Star Tribune, Randy Johnson, covers Gopher football, of course, as well. But this time of year, we shift to a lot of puck talk, and the Gophers playing UMass 5 p.m. Friday in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Randy, when you saw that draw, you saw them get the number 2 seed in that region and have to play out east against the defending champ. What was your thought?
Well, it was, wasn't too surprising, just the way the brackets, with the pairwise and everything. It was, there's one or two ways that could have gone, and that one it made sense, and especially attendance wise, you have both UMass and Northeastern in that regional in Worcester, so NCAA likes to get fans there if they can, because the regionals it's a tough event for a lot of fans to get to, because it's very little notice, and they're at different parts of the country. You got this year it's Albany, Allentown, Worcester, and then back to Loveland, Colorado, where the Gophers were last year.
So Gophers, obviously, they had a great crowd. It sounded like at that Big Ten final at Mariucci, but couldn't get the win over Michigan. That said, where do you feel like this team is right now in its journey? Are they ready? Are they in a good spot to play playoff hockey right now?
Yeah, I think so. They ended the season on a pretty good run, a 9-1 run. Ended with that 4-3 loss to Michigan on Saturday. Yeah, the crowd there was great. It was the biggest in Mariucci history. So it was, and it was loud. The nice thing about that, it was it wasn't one that was driven by, say, season tickets, because the Big Ten tournament is not part of the season ticket package. So everybody that was there had to make the conscious choice to buy the tickets for that game, as opposed to being part of a package. So it was a pretty good thing. But yeah, I think they're pretty much ready for this tournament. Bob Moskow saying that it's good that they're going on the road. They've been at home too much lately. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's one and done now. So they don't in the Big Ten tournament. You had a semifinal and then a final a week apart. So it didn't really have, say, as much of a tournament feel as
Sure.
you would when you gather a bunch of teams at one place. But now you got 4 teams in the regionals. The one wrinkle this year is there is a day off between the games. So if the Gophers would win Friday, they would play Sunday against the winner of Western Michigan and Northeastern.
So we've talked plenty already this year, just kind of about the journey the Gophers went on this year, and in how middle of the season they had so many things thrown at them, including their goalie departing for the pros. They had plenty of guys missing for the Olympics for a while. It feels like a team that has overcome plenty. Is that how much does that play into even going back to the start of the season? I mean, maybe we can get into a little bit of this in a little while too, but just everything that I'm sure people are familiar with Bob Motzko's story and just the tragedy he's had to overcome. Sometimes that can play into how a team prepares and kind of carries itself into a tournament. Do you sense any of that with this team, that they've, sometimes when a team has had a lot of adversity, they do have a certain edge to them?
I think that, I think that's something that, they've had to deal with things this year, especially the goaltending situation in early January when Jack LaFontaine, after a sweep at Michigan State, the next day he's bound for the Carolina Hurricanes. Then it falls in the lap of Justin Close, who's been spectacular, put up great numbers, and just going about their business. That's kind of what the whole team has done. It's just kind of like one foot forward, after the other. It's like they haven't had time to, necessarily sit back and think, oh, woe was me. It's just forged ahead and put together a really strong second half of the season.
If they're going to win this opening game, and especially if they're going to get to the Frozen Four, what in your mind is going to tell the story of them advancing that far?
I think a lot of it will have to do with how they handle UMass forward Bobby Trevino. He was the MVP, or the most outstanding player of the Frozen Four last year. He was the most outstanding player of the Hockey East tournament this year. He's quick. He knows how to score big goals, and it'll be interesting to see the Gophers, like their top D pair of Brock Faber and Ryan Johnson, how they match up with him. I think that's one of the areas. The other is UMass has a tested goalie in Matt Murray, who played in the national semifinal last year and beat Minnesota Duluth in overtime. It's a veteran team that's won a lot of games, so. It's the Gophers. They have the experience from last year's tournament, winning one and then losing to Minnesota State Mankato in the regional final. I like the matchup. There's a lot to watch there, I believe.
Now, this is a team that has not won an NCAA championship since 2003, and obviously Bob Motzko has gotten them on the right path again. As far as you think about where they are in their evolution, are they arriving at a point where a national championship should be in the conversation right now, or do you feel like they're still missing some pieces to really be like, going into this thinking we've got as good a chance as anybody?
I would think they have a very good chance this year. They have a lot of the pieces they need. Their motto since the middle of the year when LaFontaine left was, "We have what we need," and then they turn around saying, "And we need what we have." You got a player like Ben Myers who'll definitely be going pro after this year. He's the most highly sought after college free agent. You got a guy like Brock Faber, second round draft pick of the Kings. There's a pretty good chance he goes after this year. He's a sophomore. So you kind of got to make hay when the high end guys like that are basically sophomores or juniors. You're not always going to get a guy to stick around for 4 years.
How is Close done this in net? It just seems like such a usually you kind of know what you have in a goalie, and maybe they had a reasonable expectation that he could perform pretty well. But I mean, to do what he's done, that registers as such a surprise to me.
Yeah, it's he's just been solid. It's a situation where there's not a whole lot of wasted movement in the net with him. He's not the biggest guy, so he's not going to just sit there and have pucks bounce off. He has to move around a little bit. And just talking to him over the course of the season, he doesn't seem like a quirky goalie, the stereotypical quirky goalie type guy.
Sure.
He seems pretty even keel and everything, and just doesn't let a whole lot bother him.
Couple more things for you, Randy, before we let you go and continue binge watching college hockey all weekend. You referenced it was the biggest crowd in Mariucci history for that Big Ten championship game that they had lost to Michigan, and a lot has been made over the years of the transition to the Big Ten, how that maybe hurt some things attendance wise in the short run. And I think there's a famous picture from 3-4 years ago of a Big Ten. Big Ten game being practically empty at that building. What do you think what do you attribute is it the opening up again of a lot of things? Is it this team capturing people's particular imagination? How did they get 10,000 fans in the building for that game?
It's a combination of a lot of things. First of all, this team is on the rise. I think, its success is winning some people over. Another big thing is the student section. The students have been outstanding this year. They expanded over the last few games, expanded the student section to 5 sections instead of 3, and they filled it. That's been great. Another thing, tickets for the Big Ten semifinals were $20. Tickets for the Big Ten final were $30, and that's a lot more reasonable than they've been in the past. It's you can't. I don't see how they can. If you're going to charge $50-$60 for a ticket, you're not going to get as many people to buy those tickets. I don't think.
No,
So that's been part of it. Yeah, you still have people that are upset that they're in the Big Ten, and you're always going to have that. We'd all prefer it was back to the days of the old WCHA, where you'd have the Final Five at the X, and you'd get up to 20,000 people in that building, and you'd have all the local teams there. But unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. But to me, it's like, do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? You
Right.
Still have a college hockey team here. If they're playing, you're playing well, you should want to go and watch them.
Yep, the opportunity is there this year. I'm sure they could garner an even bigger fan base if they can get to the Frozen Four, and especially if they can win a championship for the first time in 19 seasons. Well, Randy, good stuff. Enjoyed always catching up with you on college hockey. You and I are both college hockey fans on this Star Tribune staff, so I will be watching all weekend as well. Enjoy the games, and we'll catch up with you soon, okay?
Sounds good, Mike. Appreciate it.
Great catching up with Randy Johnson. As always, nobody loves college hockey more than Randy Johnson. I sincerely believe that. He is a college hockey enthusiast, loves the sport, was watching all day Thursday. I'm sure he will be watching all day today. And if you were watching all day Thursday, it was kind of a Minnesota hockey lover's dream Thursday. Minnesota Duluth beats Michigan Tech 3-0. They are through to the region final. Minnesota State, Mankato beats Harvard 4-3. A tight one there. That one got close late, but 4-3 after they were up 2-0. Another great result for MSU Mankato. They get through to the region final as well. Region final. And University of North Dakota loses to Notre Dame in overtime. I know there's a lot of fans around here whose celebration begins when North Dakota loses. They fall 2-1 in overtime, a tough one for North Dakota. So we will see if they can keep those good Minnesota vibrations going today. I still have a soft spot for North Dakota. That's where I'm from. But that rivalry, of course, changed for me when I came to Minnesota, when I came to school at the University of Minnesota so many years ago. So that I don't know. I don't feel the same way that a lot of you do about that. But if you are a Minnesota hockey fan of a certain bent, that was a very good Thursday for you. Let's move on. Vikings. We got to talk a little bit about the Za'Darius Smith contract, because when it happened, we were like, oh man, they really went all out for Za'Darius Smith, 3-year contract that could be worth as much as $47 million with certain bonuses, but it was being billed initially as a 3-year, $42 million contract. Kind of, but in all practical purposes, it seems like more like a 1-year deal, maybe worth about $9 million, $10 million, because there's not much dead cap money after this season. There's only $11.5 million of it was guaranteed. The cap hit this year is only $3 million, a little more than $3 million. So it's relatively easy to fit that one under the cap. Next year his base salary, his $9 million. The year after that, base salary is $14 million. But the dead cap after this year is only $3 million. You could get out after just 1 year and $9.5 million if things don't work out with him. So not as much of a risk, not as much of a gamble, not as much of an all-in move as we might have thought, which, frankly, makes me feel a little bit better about it. Makes me feel a little bit like, they're being prudent with their money, that this is, a guy who, if healthy, could give them a lot of production this season, who's going to make, who's going to earn his money if that indeed happens, but that they're not, not putting a big cap number on him, only a little over $3 million. Like I said, that makes me feel better about their chances to build around him and build more on this team. Speaking of which, cornerback Chandon Sullivan reportedly going to visit the Vikings this week, a free agent. Reading from Andrew Kramer's story here in the Star Tribune. By the way, Andrew and I did a Access Vikings podcast that just went live on Thursday. You should check that out as well. But started 20 games as Green Bay's slot corner over the last 2 years. Had 3 interceptions last season. Vikings very much need help in the secondary. They have very little experience at corner right now. They've got Cameron Dantzler, Chris Boyd, Harrison Hand, and Perry Nickerson under contract. That is not going to get it done, I don't think, in the 2022 season. So all along, you would have expected them to sign more guys. Chandon Sullivan could be a good fit here if they don't want to re-sign Mackenzie Alexander, who, of course, played slot corner here last year, was here prior to that before departing in free agency. One of those, guys that came back. Mike Zimmer loved those guys that he knew he was familiar with. But the Vikings certainly need corners. Oise Adolfo-Mensah had addressed that on Wednesday, said, we think guys have a chance to play well. We like our youth. It's going to be a little bit of a different scheme, so it's not exactly relatable to what they were doing previous to now. You have avenues, free agents are there. The draft is there. So probably, even if they sign Chandon Sullivan, it sounds like they probably would need one or two more. Just one more, just two more. To be competitive on that back end. But again, not necessarily a position you have to spend big on. Will be interesting to see if they end up keeping Patrick Peterson, who has expressed an interest in coming back, or if they go a different direction at that position. Let us finish with the cooler. NCAA men's basketball tournament Thursday was awfully good. I didn't like the result of the Duke game. I don't root for Duke. I know Mike Krzyzewski's on his farewell tour. It's a good story. I can't root for him. I don't like it. But that game against Texas Tech was fantastic. A really good tournament game. These Sweet 16, these Elite 8 games are often the best ones of the tournament. That held up big time on Thursday. You had Duke, coming through, winning that game. Arkansas knocking off number 1 ranked Gonzaga in the region semifinals. That was an impressive performance by them. I mean, this thing is just wide open now that Arizona also lost to Houston. Arizona and Gonzaga, prohibitively the two favorites to win this tournament. Both of them out before the Final Four. Both of them out before the Elite 8, losing to a 4 seed and a 5 seed respectively. So this tournament just got blown wide open with those results on Thursday, and now it's really anybody's tournament. I don't know who the favorite would be right now. I like Villanova right now. They beat Michigan, stopped that run. They're through to the Elite 8 after that 63-55 win. I don't know who the favorite is right now. I'm honest. Any of the 12 remaining teams could win this tournament. Maybe not St. Peter's, but why not? Any of these teams could still do it at this point with Gonzaga and Arizona out. So that will be fun to watch. The women's tournament should be great to watch as it resumes today as well. A lot of good stuff to watch this weekend. And that will do it for me today. Go watch all those sports. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'll be back at it Monday with Patrick Royce to talk about everything that happened.